Hello YouTube, I'm Nye from the Finale Guitar Shop in Sheffield and you join me on Folk Friend, your one-stop shop for Celtic backing guitar tutorials. In today's video I'm going to be showing you a really interesting trick that you can use to give you some super cool chromatic alterations to the aeolian and the dorian mode. The first thing that you need to understand to really get your head around the techniques I'm going to talk about in this video is that between the dorian mode and the aeolian mode there is only one note of difference. So if I play the scale of A dorian, it sounds something like this. And if I play the scale of A aeolian, it sounds like this. Now you can hear there was only one note different between the two, and that was the sixth note. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in dorian, and that one in aeolian. So the difference there is that in dorian the sixth note is the same note that it would be in the scale of the equivalent major. So A major contains the same sixth as A dorian does. Whereas in the aeolian mode that sixth gets flattened by a semitone, and that's what gives that mode its much darker, more miserable sounding feeling than the dorian mode. Before we go any further with this video, if you do get something out of this, please do me a massive favour, just hit the little green thumbs up down there. The YouTube algorithm loves it and it gets my videos shown to more people. And while you're there, why not hit the subscribe as well? There's a little bell next to it. If you hit both of those, you'll get a free Celtic guitar tutorial from me every weekend. You can also find hundreds of those for free already available on folkfriend.co.uk. Check out the videos page there for loads of free stuff from myself. So the fact that there is only one note difference between those two modes means that if that one note is not present in the melody, you can treat the tune that you're accompanying as if it's in either of those two modes. And that means that there are a lot of extra chord options available to you. The really interesting thing about Celtic music is that in the two minor modes, dorian and aeolian, that are widely used in our little part of the world, the sixth note is really not very common in minor tunes. So what you tend to find is that in most Irish melodies, Scottish melodies and Welsh melodies, and also the same holds true actually for Breton and other types of Celtic music as well, that sixth note will not crop up very often, and that means that you can get away with using these techniques that I'm about to tell you most of the time. What we're going to do then is we're going to take a tune called the Cliffs of Moher, which I've recently released a free play-along video for, which you can find in the corner of the screen. You can get that up in another tab and you can practice along at home using some of the techniques that I'm going to show you. I'll play through the tune using the lower part of my scale. If you watch my hands, my sixth note is going to be this one here, the F sharp, which I'm going to hit with my index finger on the D string. So if you watch where I'm going, you'll be able to see when I hit it. So bar 1, nothing there. Bar 2, there it is. Bar 3, nothing there. I'm going to go up an octave for this bit. And in bar 4 it was there again, but only briefly. So you can see there in bar 2 of the tune and in bar 4 there is a sixth, but in the other bars no sixth. With that sixth as well, I've talked in my previous videos about how to pick chords by ear, about the fact that you base your chord choices on the notes which are on the dominant beats, and the notes between them are much less important. And neither of those sixths was on a dominant beat, but ba 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 bum. So in that bar, ba ba, those were my important notes, and that sixth was between them. So the sixth there can effectively more or less be ignored, so you could actually get away with using this technique on that bar as well, and it would sound okay. It's very rare to find a sixth on a dominant beat in a Celtic tune, but if you do, then obviously you have to play as if you're in the correct mode for whichever sixth is present. So what is this technique that I'm talking about? Well, if you're in the mode of A dorian, which this tune is, the chords that are available to you are all listed here. They're the same set of chords that would be available to you in the key of G major, G Ionian, except that now you're starting on A minor, your chord 4 is D major, and your chord 5 is E minor, and those are going to be your three main ones. The D major chord, if you think about D major, A D major chord is made up of D, F sharp and A, and those are the three notes within that chord. And F sharp is the sixth note in the key of A dorian. If we were in A aeolian, that F sharp would be an F natural. And if you take a chord and you take its major third and you flatten that major third by a semitone, you would get a D minor chord instead of a D major chord. So that means that if we were in A aeolian, and I can show you this on the wheel as well, I'll just turn it round. If we were in A aeolian, you can see now our chord 4 is D minor instead of D major. And that is because that F sharp that was there has become an F natural. If you want an amazing mode wheel, by the way, I do recommend these to you. I'm biased because I invented them, but they are super useful. They really help you understand what the modes are, how they work, and they also show you which notes are in whatever key you're playing in, which other modes have got the same notes as it as well, and which chords will fit with a tune in any key. And they're sustainably sourced plywood, and they fit in the front of your guitar case. So if you'd like to buy one of those directly off me, check them out. They're in the card in the corner of the screen, and they can be posted anywhere in the world for a pretty affordable price. Now the other thing that would change in our chords between Dorian and Aeolian is if we go back to A Dorian, you can see there, starting from A, the sixth chord that we get to in Dorian would be F sharp diminished. And if we were in A Aeolian, the sixth chord that we get to would be F major. Now either the F sharp diminished, which we're going to substitute out by playing D with a thumb, like so, which is the first inversion of a D chord, sounds much nicer than F sharp diminished, so we're going to use that instead. That would be a valid substitute for A minor if we were in A Dorian, because you can always substitute a chord to the one that's two below it in the key scale. So there's A minor, and two below it is F sharp diminished. Equally, if we were in A Aeolian, our substitution would be using F major instead of A minor. And what we can actually do, because that sixth note is hardly ever in the tune, in any bar where that sixth note is not in the tune, we can actually use either. If you use the F sharp diminished, which we're substituting to be the first inversion of D instead, because it sounds nicer, if you use that, it sounds very optimistic. So, and if you used the Aeolian type substitution, where you were using F, it sounds a lot darker, but kind of more cinematic, more epic in a way. It's a much more modern sound, I think, that second option. So that gives you some really nice, interesting possibilities. You'll notice that there is a sixth in the second bar. Now, I would generally recommend, if you hear a sixth in a bar, don't use the other variant for that bar. You know, here we've got the Dorian sixth in that bar, so we should probably use a Dorian type chord there. However, because that sixth is not on a dominant beat, then it's not really so important. If that sixth were on a dominant beat, then you'd really have to respond to it and play D major instead of D minor to match the F sharp in that bar. However, because it's not on a dominant beat, your foot isn't tapping on the beat where that sixth is, so you can kind of get away with it. Now you know that any time you're playing chord 1 and you get bored of it, you can always replace it with chord 4. However, the question, once you're well versed in this technique, becomes which chord 4 shall I use? Because you've got two potential options. With our chord 4, which was previously major, we could do like that, or we could play it as if we were in Aeolian, where chord 4 would be minor, and we'd get like that. Now, where the fun really starts is when you start being able to use a combination of both modes together to get interesting chromatic effects. One that I really like to do myself is, if you imagine the simplest version of the chords for this tune, which would be something like this. We've got a big chord 1 section, another bit of chord 1, and then we've got chord 5 on our 7th foot tap in the 4th bar. and then it goes round and basically does it all again, except that now it's going from chord 5 back to chord 1 to mark the end of the section. We could take that, we could do one of two things. The first thing we could think about doing is substituting. Instead of A minor, I'm going to play the chord which is 2 below it. So first, I'm going to go to the aeolian chord which is 2 below it. So I'm going to go from A minor down to F. And then for a really cool chromatic effect, I'm going to go to the Dorian chord 6, which is going to be played with D with the thumb to substitute for F sharp diminished. And then, as I've started a little chromatic run in the bass there, I'm going to carry on up to G. And G works because G is E minor's related major, E minor's our chord 5, and if you're in a mode where chord 5 is minor, you can always play chord 5's related major instead of it. So that gives me this really cool kind of dark to light chromatic ascent chord progression. And I'll just play that along with the tune so you can hear how great it sounds. There you go. So that's a pretty cool one, and I really like that. Another thing you could actually do is to do it in the opposite direction, because there we've got a... If you think of your chord progressions as a kind of story, we've got something like everything was dark and miserable, then it got a lot worse, then it kind of started getting better, and then it was all okay, and then it resolves back to where it started. If we did it in reverse, we could do A minor, optimistic chord 6 from Dorian, so that is our D over F sharp, or first inversion of D, D with a thumb. Then we could go down to F, which makes it more miserable, and then we could keep going down to our miserable 5 chord, E minor. So that would give us a dark, miserable version of the same thing, just by reversing that simple little chord progression. Something like that. So that's that one. It's a really useful little trick, and there's about a million other places you can throw it in, because anytime you've got a big chord 1 section, you'll be able to use either F or F sharp and use them for those kinds of chromatic links, as I've just demonstrated. Another thing that you can do is, if you have a chord 4 section, or if you're using chord 4 to replace chord 1 in a chord 1 section, because you're always allowed to do that. You know, if you've got a big section of chord 1 and you're getting bored playing chord 1 for a long time, put chord 4 in there instead. Chord 4 can replace chord 1, and by extension that means that any of chord 4's substitution options can also replace chord 1. So in this tune we've got like a big block of A minor in the simple version of the chords, so I'm going to replace part of that with a chord 4 block to make a progression like A minor, D, D, and then chord 5, which is either going to be E minor or its related major G. What you can do then is you can take your chord 4s and you can choose to use either the optimistic, bright, cheery major chord 4 as in the Dorian mode, or you can choose to use the dark, miserable, pessimistic one from the aeolian mode. Let's talk about the kinds of chromatic switches that I was doing before then. So if I wanted to make a dark to light kind of chromatic switch, what I would do is I'd go from A minor, then I'd go to D minor, and then I'd go to D major. And at the top of my chord progression there, you can see if you watch the top string, I've set up a little chromatic movement there, which kind of wants to carry on. And the way that I would make it carry on would be either by playing G major next, which is my major substitute for chord 5. That's probably what I'd most likely do. Or if you were feeling arty, you could actually do play an E minor chord and just stick your little finger on at the top to keep that nice little chromatic movement running at the top there. That's also a pretty cool option. So I'll demonstrate those two progressions for you. I'm going to play along with the tune again. I'll run once through the A part, playing first A minor, then D minor, then D major, then G. So that would be a sort of dark to light version of this little chromatic shift. And then I'll do the same thing in reverse. So I'll do A minor to D major, which is light and optimistic. Then I'll play D minor, and after that, because I've set my chromatic little run at the top there going, it's going down now, and I want it to carry on going down, and so I'll carry it on down to E, and I'll go down to my dark E minor chord, which is chord 5. Is the pessimistic version going down from D to D minor to E minor. So you can hear there, the second option I think for this tune works a lot better than the first option, and the reason for that is that that second bar has the sixth in it, and so when I played my dark negative minor 4th chord from the aeolian mode over that bar, it didn't sound very natural because the 6th was clashing. The second option worked better because then I was playing D major in that bar from the Dorian mode, and then in the following bar where there isn't a 6th in that bar, then I was playing D minor because I could get away with it better because there was no 6th for it to clash with. So you really do need to kind of get good at listening out to the tune. What I would say though is it can be quite hard if you're listening to a tune fast to think, oh, is that the 6th? Is that the 6th in that bar? You don't want to be thinking about it too much. If you try this out in some different places, try the dark to light version, try the light to dark version, you'll get the feel after a while for what they sound like, and you'll be able to hear a tune, try it once and see whether it works. If it sounds good in your head, the chances are, if you listen to a lot of music, you will have already picked up a lot of this stuff subconsciously. If it sounds good in your head, it probably sounds good in other people's heads as well. Obviously that's a skill that's refined over time, but you're only going to get better at that by trying things out and seeing whether they fit or not. So that is it from me for this video. I hope as ever that it's been helpful to all you viewers out there in the ether. Thank you very much for watching, I really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, hit the little like button, really helps me out, and hit the subscribe and the little bell next to it as well for a free Celtic guitar tutorial from me every week. If you want loads of tips like this as well, you can also check out my book, Backing Guitar Techniques for Traditional Celtic Music, which you can get hold of in the corner right now, or linked at the end of this video. There's also Folky Fridays, a free live stream guitar lesson every week, Friday 5:30 PM UK time. You can find details of that linked on the Folk Friend Facebook page, which is in the box down below. Like us on Facebook as well, you'll get all my news and updates then by doing that. So thank you very much for watching, check out my other videos, and I will see you all next weekend for more Celtic guitar.